All right, everybody. This is Frankie Dranks Moreno, and I'm here incredibly privileged to introduce our virtual tasting with Corona Cigar featuring the Dalmore. And I have been given the great high honor of being able to introduce one of the two gentlemen, because I will pass on the honor to the next gentleman that I'm introducing now. And his name is Jeff Borysiewicz, who is the founder of Corona Cigar Company, as you well know, in Central Florida. And he has an amazing establishments, 4 amazing establishments. But more than that, he is the driving force behind Florida Sun-Grown. And this is the rebirth of Florida-grown tobacco. And with that, I want to introduce my good friend, and it's truly an honor to introduce you, Jeff, to your virtual tasting. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Frankie, and thanks for putting these on. I'm a huge fan of your sticks and sips that you do every week. And, you know, we do a lot of whiskey tastings in the stores and seminars, and with some of this COVID shutdowns and limited capacity, all that has kind of come to a screeching halt. So I love what you guys are doing. And I got to tell you, the best ones that we do, there's a superstar in this industry that is he's the Ayatollah rock and roller when it comes to single malt Scotch, and it's Richard Patterson. And so I had worked on this for a while. I said, man, we got to get Richard on the show. Yeah. And so I'm honored to introduce Richard Patterson. He's coming to us from Scotland, the beautiful country of green grass and brown skies and rainy weather, but great whiskey. And let me introduce Richard. Richard is he's the grand maestro when it comes to the Dalmore single malt Scotch, and he works for one of the most respected Scotch whiskey companies in all of the world. And there's a few other distilleries that he's in charge of as well. So, Richard, welcome to the show. It's all yours.
Thanks very much, Jeff. And ladies and gentlemen and whiskey lovers and cigar lovers, it's great to be here speaking from my home here in, I was going to say sunny Troon, Ayrshire, but it's pitch black out there because we're soon going to go to bed soon. But it's a great honor and privilege. Always, I love coming over to the pond and coming over to America and to share, you know, these drums with you. Jeff and I have been together. We were in the Capitol Grill having a lovely lunch and what have you quite some time ago. But it's great to be here today to talk about the Dalmore. And I don't know if many of you have traveled from America to the Dalmore Distillery, but if you do come over, just remember a couple of things. Scotland is a wonderful place, but the weather's not as good as here as it is with you. So we have about 900 billion litres of rain falling on Scotland every year. So although it's not so good for the tourists because most of them die of rust, but it is great for Scotch whiskey, keeping the temperature and allowing it to mature. So I hope perhaps one day I can welcome many of you over to the Dalmore. Please don't all come at once, but do come and see us at the Dalmore Distillery, which is about 4 hours by car from Glasgow or Edinburgh further north, where our distillery is actually situated.
So Richard, 2 years ago, I actually made that drive and drove right past the Dalmore as I was heading up to Highland Park Distillery to go jump on a ferry to go up to the Orkneys. And yeah. What's interesting is that road that your distillery is on, just for folks that just to kind of paint a mental picture, it's like the Pacific Coast Highway of California, but it's along this jagged rocky road in Scotland. And these guys, man, they like to drive fast. So they whip around on these corners, and next thing you know, there's the Dalmore, beautiful distillery, and you got a wonderful castle not far from you. And it's biggest town there is a place called Inverness. So it's Inverness. You ever go to? Yep, beautiful place. Go ahead, Richard.
But that, you know, you just said something which is very important, Jeff. Anytime you guys are coming to Scotland, what you must do more than anything is use your eyes, because when you get off the plane and get on your car and you go up the main road off the A9, as we call it, up to Inverness, you must look at the the mountains, the snow-capped mountains, the forests, everything about it, because as the environment changes, so does the temperature, and that has an effect on the whiskey. But when in fact you leave Inverness, it's 22 miles north of Inverness, you see the wonderful Cromarty Firth, that is the peninsula where the Black Isle is, and then further out is the North Sea. And that's where all the wind and the rain comes in, and it nurtures our whiskey lying at the distillery itself. And so it's very important that when you come, look around. Don't just say, oh, there's a hill. Look at where the location is, and that will give you an indication, because we've got the mighty Ben Wyvis Mountains behind us. And as soon as you see that area, you immediately think, this whiskey must mature. It's got body and it's got character, but we need to mature it. And it's, you know, that kind of essence is the very beginning of the spirit of the Dalmore.
So Richard, I'm glad you pointed that out, because one of the things that a lot of people, it's hard to paint the mental picture in your head. Scotland's not a big country, but yet there's a huge difference between where this whiskey comes from, whether it's an Islay malt or whether it's from the Highlands or whether it's up where I consider where you're at north of the Highlands, but yet in sort of the seaside as well. So you guys have a combination of both, which is kind of unusual, would you say?
Absolutely. You know, great question, because at the present moment, we've got about 130 distilleries actually in production, but we've also now got about 30 also small boutique distilleries. But what we do is we draw an imaginary line between Greenock up to Dundee. The whiskies below that line are known as lowland malts. These whiskies are light in body, charm, elegance, but more importantly with femininity. But if you're looking for backbone structure, you cross that Highland line and you come up, and on the right-hand side, you've got the Speyside Valley. In there alone, there's about 51 distilleries, and the River Spey passes through it, running for about 106 miles, but there's about 26, 27 distilleries on its bank, but each one is different. But you can sense the sort of tranquility of the area. So therefore, these whiskies are quite charming, and as I say, they've got that femininity. But when you leave that area and come beyond Inverness, I call them the sort of Vikings of the North, because they are quite heavy, different styles. Before we leave, you know, and get to Dalmore, you go over to the right-hand side, you go to Campbellton, where there used to be 36 distilleries. Now there's only 3, Springbank, Glengyle, Glen-Scotia, but that's more affected by the sea, and you get that lovely salinity. Then you go over to Islay, medicinal, smoky, peppery. You get the softer ones like Bruichladdich and Bunnahabhain. So many different styles emerge from these 4 distinctive areas. But as I say, when you come to Dalmore, established way back in 1839, it's got a point of difference. So when you arrive, you'll see the Cromarty Firth, you'll see the peninsula of the Black Isle, you'll sense the wind and rain. But when you look around, the first thing I want you to do is look and see the shape of the stills, because the shape of the stills will immediately tell you that at Dalmore Distillery, they're not tall, slim stills, they're big, fat, bulbous stills, and therefore you're going to get complexity coming off there. And then, of course, more importantly, don't forget, Jeff, this is the most important thing, the cask. 80% of the influence comes from the wood. American white oak from the Ozark Mountain Range of Missouri, 40,000 square miles of natural forest, and that's where we get our wood. But that's just the beginning to give us the style that we're looking for, and then we get our sherry wood to take it to another level of luxury.
So Frankie, I'm about ready to taste some whiskey. He's over here getting us all juiced up, telling us about the distillery in Scotland. I'm ready to taste something. How about you?
I am incredibly ready. I'm swirling my glass and I'm going to toss it on the carpet, and I'm going to be called out on it. But I'm going to blame Richard for making me do this. So Richard, please take it away.
Right, we're going to sample the Dalmore 12 years old. Now this is very important. You'll see the typical bell-shaped bottle. You'll see the stag, which I'll talk about later on. But this is 12 years old, minimum 12 years old, but it is 50% American white oak, 50% American white oak, and the other 50% is what we call Methuselah. Methuselah Sherry. There's the Methuselah Sherry. Now, sorry, but you guys over in America don't drink too much sherry, which is very bad. But nevertheless, let me tell you, look, 30 years old Methuselah. And when you look at the sherry, when you pour it out, look how rich it is. This is the sherry, the Methuselah Sherry, but look at the age. It is a minimum of 30 years old. 30 years old from Jerez de la Frontera in Spain, from a great company called Gonzalez Baez. Now, just before we taste it, this is how it works. What we do is we get the sherry, we leave 5 liters of it in the cask, and it comes to Scotland. By the time it comes to Scotland, there's only about 3 liters left. We then empty that out because you're not allowed to add sherry to the whiskey. But what you find is about 10% of the sherry is in the pores of the wood. So when we put our 10-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old Dalmore into it, we leave it for about 3 years to let it soak and draw that goodness from the pores of the wood, and it gives it another dimension. So when we pour it out, I'm glad to see you've got 2 glasses. This is, of course, the Glencairn glass. You can see it. This is now in the region of something like 27 million glasses for this glass as the one that's going around the world to sample whiskey. That's pretty good. But if you look at this glass here, this is the famous tumbler. Jeff and I would have probably used this tumbler to share a few drams together. But look at it. You can get 1, 2, 3, you can get 5 fingers in the glass, no problem. So for nosing the whiskey, pretty useless. This is the one that you want. So when you do swirl it around, bring it up and say, hello. Then go back to it and say, how are you? And then you go back a 3rd time and say, quite well, thank you very much. But you must do it slowly. Don't you guys, you have this bloody cowboy films, which has been operating in America for a long time, that you see them knocking it back in the saloon bars. That's not what you do here. This is 12 years old. So when I'm going through to say hello, the alcohol hits your nose first. Then you go back and say, how are you? And then, of course, you say, yes, that's fine. You go back a 3rd time, and it gives you all these aromas. Now, today's the 19th of August, very important day, because the 19th of August, 1883, same as the Brooklyn Bridge was started to be built, but on the 19th of August, 1883, is Coco Chanel was born. She died in Paris on the 10th of January, 1971. But in 1921, she created, Ernest Beau created a wonderful perfume, Chanel No. 5. Top note, of course, jasmine, Bulgarian roses, ylang ylang. When it comes to the Dalmore, the top note that you smell is going to be chocolate orange. Chocolate orange. So you rust, sip and savor and hold it long there. So what I don't want you to do is to knock it back. What I want you to do is to drink it like this. We say in Scotland, big slangy va.
Slangy va.
Let it go down. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello there. It opens up. First taste is important, but you must go back a 2nd time. Go back a 2nd time. And let it go down. Very rich, hot, spicy to begin with. Then you see that chocolate orange, the cinnamon, that lovely hint, just a hint just now of balsamic, not quite there yet. A little bit of licorice, but it's that lovely chocolate orange that lingers on in the palate. Very, very good. But keeping it the 2nd taste, that allows you to get in, but not using water, just straight. If you want to reduce it, take a little still water, a few drops. Don't take ice, or I'll come over to America and give you a wee bit of a, please, if you can avoid ice, all the much the better. But remember, this is 50% American white oak, 50% sherry. That's sherry, 30-year-old Methuselah. Methuselah means very old, minimum 30 years. 75% Palomino Fino, 25% Pedro Jimenez. So it's a lovely, wonderful sherry to give us that style that we're looking for.
Well, Richard, I'm going to knock it back and force you to come overseas and smack me a good one because I deserve it. But what an amazing experience to be able to taste the Dalmore 12 with you. So I say Sanjivat to you.
Sanjivat.
And to Jeff. And
but you know, Frankie, you said a great thing there. You said, Richard, sometimes you throw that on the carpet. And you're right, I do. I haven't got a carpet because the office has just been built in my house. So I better not throw it anywhere. But what I do, people say to me, do you do it intentionally? But when I go like that and swirl it away, it's the lip of the glass. It's making sure that it's absolutely clean. And that's what I use when I'm in the sample room in Glasgow. I always shake it around and throw it away, knowing that it will be nice and clean and ready to assess the whiskey. So, so important.
Whenever Richard's doing these seminars in a bar or in a restaurant or something, you can see everybody, the servers and people in the restaurant being like, what the hell did this guy just do? Just threw everything on the carpet. But that's part of the thing. And I've heard before, it takes out, make sure there's no other odors in the glass. So when you smell it, it's straight up.
It really removes it. You know, Jeff, that's so important because what happens is you get it trapped in the rim. And that's why when you swirl it around, throw it, it just eliminates it and makes sure that the glass is perfectly clean for you.
Now, Richard, I think I would probably shit a brick if I saw one of our staff do that with like a 50-year-old whiskey, though. That'd be like a couple $100 getting thrown around. No,
don't do it with the 50, the 35, or the 40, please. Give it a bit. Just do that with something else. But not.
I think if we just do a nice little bartender wipe of the inside of the glass, we can take any of that dishwasher residue. We can take it off very nicely and make sure we serve something incredibly wonderful.
I remember when I was in Taiwan many years ago, and I said, we've got to go on to our next presentation. Let's just grab a beer and a sandwich. And we got the bill, and it came to something like, I don't know, $2,000 or something. I said, oh, for a sandwich and a beer, this is ridiculous. Your prices are terrible. No, sir. This is only about $20 for the food and the sandwich. The rest is for cleaning the carpet after you put the whiskey on it.
So Richard, a quick thing. A lot of people might, your Twitter account, you've got, you're called The Nose. So why don't you tell us about The Nose? And I've heard a rumor. Tommy over at the Davidoff store in Tampa was telling me, you got an insurance policy on your nose?
Well, I did have an insurance policy many years ago, Jeff, and it was something like 2.3 million or something. But the premiums, as you will know, a man that has property and, you know, the premiums are pretty expensive now. So that has sort of gone out the window. But I can assure you that's the kind of premium it was at one point. But, you know, people say, why the nose? It's because, okay, my great-great-grandfather was Sorana de Bergerac. But nevertheless, you know, my father, my grandfather, they had sort of similar noses. But it's the nose looking at it and nosing the whiskey. And I mean nosing. When I met you, you know, when I meet people, I'm smelling them. I'm smelling everything. I'm smelling the great sunshine around. I'm smelling the market, and everything is about the nose. You know, before you open the curtains, is it dry? Is it wet? Is it damp? You're testing your senses the whole time. So that's why I'm, you know, making sure that it's up to a high standard, because the nuances that you're picking up and what you're expecting, you know, the DNA of Dalmore. But when it's born, when it's matured at 12 years, 30 years, 40, 50, 60, that will change about the same time as when you were born. You went to school, nursery, kindergarten, went to university, got a first job. These are parts of your life was when you will change. There's still the same personality, but as you get older, things change. And it's the same with the whiskey in exactly the same manner you must recognize.
Well, I'm going to take a moment here, Jeff. I'm going to jump in because I think people need to know when you mention the nose, goodness knows, and the way we spell it here, This is a wonderful book. And Richard, would you take a moment to talk about the passionate revelations of a Scotch whiskey master blender, which is a great subtitle?
Well, Gavin Smith and I, we got together way back in 2004, but it took us about four and a half years. In 2008, halfway through 2008, is when we finally launched that book. But I can honestly say we worked together in perfect harmony. He would say, well, what do you want to say? And he would say, how about this way? And I would say, no, how about that way? But we would eventually come to the words, to my mind, that summarize what I wanted to reveal that passion that I had for it. So I hope when people read the book, they will then sense that I'm actually talking to them in the words that have been written down. But it does reveal everything. We go through, okay, the distilleries. We go from the very beginning, first reference to Scotch whiskey, 1494 and all that, right the way through to the present day when, blends have changed and how we make up a blend. So if you're interested in whiskey, it does give it to you. It's not just about, Dalmore, White Makai. It's about the industry that's been part of my life, for the last 54 years.
So Richard, can you tell us about White Makai? Because a lot of people here in America don't know what White Makai is.
White Makai is a Scotch whiskey company. It was started in 1844 by James White, Charles Mackay, and they were into blended whiskies. Now, let me just remind everybody that blended whiskey still accrues to about 91% of the whiskey market. Whiskies like White Mackay, Johnny Walker, these are blended whiskies. Then, of course, the rise of single malts in 1964, I make no bones about it. Glenfiddich, or Glenfiddich, as sometimes you guys say over in America, but they were the first to really start marketing it. But then in 1997 in Frankfurt, we had the Whiskey Festival. And then in 1998 in New York, you had your Whiskey Festival. And from that, we got greater awareness of single malt. So it's really blossomed. With the result, we went through a number of takeovers. I don't mind telling you, I've gone through 11 takeovers. I'm on my 19th different boss. But White Makai has expanded, not just highlighting the blended whiskies, but the single malts. In 1960, White Makai bought Dalmore Distillery. Then, of course, in 1993, Tullybarden Distillery came into the portfolio. And then, of course, Jura, Feddacairn had come in with, much earlier with Tom and Toole in 73. But Jura, Feddacairn, Dalmore, Tamnavulin, these are single malts that have really risen and really put it. But Dalmore is the sort of jewel in the crown because of the age. And I repeat that because they have, over the years, like the Dalmore 62 years old, the Dalmore 64 years old, the Dalmore 64 years old, only 3 bottles produced in 2010. And there is one, of course, in Atlanta. There's one in New York, and there's one over here in London. But they're going to command at the present moment about $1.6 million just for one bottle. So that gives you an idea of how the market has changed. But in the early years with Dalmore, we had it at a very low price, which was not the marketing strategy that we wanted. So it took us quite a number of years to get everything in place and to really reveal what a luxurious product it really is. And that's why the wood investment has been so high, especially with Jerez de la Frontera, with Gonzalez Baez, but we get the quality we're looking for. But it's not quantity, it's quality at the end of the day. We don't profess to have millions and millions of cases. It's has to be restricted in certain areas.
So a lot of people, I think, aren't aware of, like, there's such a big range of price of these whiskeys. For example, like, we're selling this Dalmore 12 with the FSG sampler we did for $119.95 as a nice cigar and whiskey pairing. But the range of this stuff, what's the more expensive ones that we're selling now, Benjamin?
You can. We've got limited editions. We've got 21, 25 years old limited editions, and then 30, 35. When it gets to Dalmore 35, 40, 45, you're restricting that to around about 400 bottles worldwide. So when it's only 400 bottles, you can imagine the demand is so great for it. But all I can say, these are in Baccarat crystal bottles. This is true luxury. They're limited, but they're very special. The 35-year-old, for instance, is matured in vintage port 1970. And it's a real class act. This is something that needs to be sipped, savored at the right time with the right people. You know, this is, I emphasize this very strongly. Don't just buy a bottle and look at it, share it with the people that you love. Because when you share with the people you love, you will give them memories that will be with them for the rest of their lives. And that's why Dalmore is for sipping, savoring, and talking about how life, yes, even during these tough times, like we are doing today, what has brought us together? Dalmore single Highland malt, which we're enjoying and hopefully have many memories to come.
So Benjamin, when you get a chance, pop off of mute, and I'd like to go over some of the higher expressions that we have in America. I know we have them at our Davidoff store in Tampa and our Corona stores here in Orlando, but they're pretty rare. And so Benjamin, pop on there and tell us about some of the rare stuff that Benjamin's in the U.S. And
well, first, I think
stuff.
Benjamin needs to introduce himself. So Benjamin, please introduce yourself to everybody.
Thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate it. I was supposed to be IT in the background, but I'm okay with being up front too. My name is Ben. I'm the single malt whiskey specialist for the Southeast of the United States. I've had the pleasure of working alongside Richard Patterson for almost 5 years now. So Richard, I'm glad that you're still talking to me. It's a good sign. Funny enough, when I first met Richard, it was in Chicago. I only had him for half a day, so I put him in for like 4 events. And at the end of the day, he said, "Don't ever do that again. You're trying to kill me." And I was like, "Okay, Richard, I'm not going to kill you from this point forward." But I make a point to take very good care of him every time he comes to town. But to answer your question, Jeff, there's some pretty unique pieces within the United States. I know that you are an owner and also sell some of these wonderful pieces as well. Richard touched on the 35-year-old that we have with the Baccarat Crystal Collection. We've got the 40-year-old. We've got the 45-year-old. The allocations for the United States, unfortunately, have gotten smaller and smaller because of the rarity of the actual pieces. Because if you think about the final amount of liquid that's going to be 45 years plus, it takes a long time to obviously get to that point. But we do have a few of those bottles still available in the United States. You know, obviously, if we want to go and purchase one of those things, talk to Jeff. Jeff can definitely get you one of those bottles. But they range anywhere between $6,500 all the way up to $11,000 a bottle, between the 35 all the way up to the 45-year-old. If you're looking at something really unique, Richard, I don't think you've touched on this yet, but the Consolation Collection pieces. We've got a few a la carte bottles in the United States that are still floating around. If you want to taste one of these wonderful whiskeys, go have a dram, go see Tommy over at the Tampa location, and he can show you and tell you a little bit more about the Consolation 1991. Otherwise, there are only 2 bottles of the Dalmore 1978 that are still available.
So one of the things that we started doing is that, you know, we've always invested in I call it an investment in the scotches when they start getting real old, because if I wish I had known better in 2008, I would have loaded up on a lot of stuff. Matter of fact, I wish I would have loaded up on Pappy Van Winkle. We used to get that stuff as much as we wanted to. But
you do have, and you did have, the only collections that I know of a few of the Mackenzie series that Richard had put out. The 1995
Casa
Loud that I think I drank the last 2 bottles. Fantastic whiskey. But you were
Casa Loud. You know, Casa Loud was brought out in July 2011, and you know the price. If you've got some of that, is probably tripled in price. You know, it's quite unbelievable. But just talking about the Consolation Collection, so that you're fully aware of that, we launched that in Terminal 5, London Heathrow Airport on the 1st of May 2012, and that's a collection of 21 bottles, natural strength, natural color, and that's going back from 1964, you know, starting in 1992 to 1964. And, it's about $350,000 you know, for that collection. But you won't get the collection now. You'll only get some of the individual bottles. But it's to show you what is natural. It took me about 15 years to put that together, but it gives you real essence of different scenarios, different maturations, wood types and everything, you know, all around the Dalmore.
Well, I always find it interesting is that I don't want to use the word it's an investment, but I've seen people have been buying bottles like this, and then next thing you know, 4 or 5 years later, they're worth double and triple the price, and it's like amazing.
I have to say it's very amazing at the present moment, Jeff, because during the lockdown, when it started in March, we found that the people in the Far East, they were severely locked down in February and March, and they got bored. And they said, well, I can't go anywhere. What have I got? I've got communication, I've got internet. And that's when they went onto the internet and started buying. And what we found around the world at the present moment, the prices have really risen quite dramatically. You know, when you look at the 35, 40, and you know, you are seeing a lot of collector's items being available, but the prices have risen. But there are still places that you can get some good deals to pick up these bottles.
Excellent. So, Richard, why don't you tell us what the Stag is about? Because we didn't get on that. What's the
Stag is actually all centered around one of the other whiskeys. Hopefully, we're going to sample is the Dalmore King Alexander, and that is the King Alexander, and that's called the Fury of the Stag, because it was in 1263. King Alexander III of Scotland was out hunting after he managed to get rid of the Scandinavians from Scotland, and he unfortunately cornered a raging stag. And it was a royal stag, and what a royal stag is, it has 6 points either side, a 12-pointer. And the stag was just about to attack him when a man called Colin Fitzgerald, chieftain of the Clan Mackenzie, steps forward with his stag, with his big spear, kills the stag, saves the king. Because he saves the king, he's given lands of around the Isle of Skye, called a place called Kintail. But more importantly, because his name was Mackenzie, chieftain of the Clan Mackenzie, he said, you can use the stag logo as the emblem of your clan. So any Mackenzie you meet in America or Scotland or around the world, their clan history will have the stag. So when Andrew Mackenzie arrived at Dalmore Distillery in 1867, went into full production, 26th of January, 1868, he said, let's put the stag on the bottle. But a great guy called Chris Watts said, if we want to make this very special, let's enlarge the stag. The biggest problem we had when we put it on this bottle is keeping it absolutely safe. A lot of people used to take knives, rip the stag off, and put the stag in their pocket. But this can no longer be the case because it's very difficult to get it off now. But that's the reason why we've got the stag on every bottle. And it's a great emblem because when we have it up in a gantry or in the shop, you immediately recognize the stag and the bell-shaped bottle, and it immediately reflects, you know, the Dalmore. So that's the Mackenzie. If you ever want to see, is it a true story? Well, come to the National Portrait Museum of Edinburgh. Come into the left-hand side of the museum. You'll see the Titians. You'll see the Rayburns. You'll see these wonderful paintings. But as you turn round, look down the corridor, you'll see this magnificent painting by Benjamin West, the American artist, in 1786. I don't know if you know Benjamin West. He's the man that painted A Shame of Peace, which hung in the White House. So when your second president, John Adams, arrived on the 1st of November, 1800, that's the painting. But you'll find 2 British guys missing because he was too embarrassed that the British guys didn't want to be associated with it. And that's why it's called Ashamed of Peace.
So, Richard, in America, we would call that a big buck, right?
A big buck, that's right.
Yeah.
But we have many. You know, you come to Jura, you'll see lots of stags. That's why Jura means red deer. And you'll see them, more like the 6,500 deer on this small island. with only 200 people. So you're more likely to see a stag as opposed to a person.
So in America, we have this real cheap wine called Mad Dog 2020. Frankie's probably had that when he was about 13 years old, right?
12. Just
12,
to be
all
clear.
right. So in Scotland, you got a version of it called Buckfast, right?
Yeah.
So they don't have a buck on the front of their bottle, do they?
No, they have a church because it was actually an old monastery where the monastics got together with the wine and created this sort of tonic wine. Henry VIII, when he came on the throne, had the dissolution of the monasteries between 1536 and 1540. And in fact, the Buckfast Abbey was, I understand, brought to the ground, but it was resurrected. But they produce it, and it's a very popular drink, I can tell you, in Scotland.
Yeah, it's usually that's the Mad Dog 2020, or the bottle of Bucky over there. But
That's right.
Interesting story. So
this is Jeff. This is our segue into like the cigar malt, the Bucky.
Yeah, right. So we're going from Buckfast to the cigar malt. I'm gonna say I'm smoking my FSG here, and I'm ready to pair it up with some cigar malt. So Richard's Dalmore's the only guy, and I think Richard had the only guy that had the foresight to really, see that there's a real pairing of flavors between a fine cigar and a fine single malt Scotch. So lead us into the beautiful Dalmore cigar malt.
This started way back in 1999 when, as all of you will remember, there was a big interest in cigars. I have to say, a lot of people would say it was more quantity rather than quality, but nevertheless, cigars were in fact a big business. And Jim Beam, who owned us at the time, said, "What do you think, Richard?" I said, "Well, amazing, because Dalmore has got that body and that character." So we started producing what we call a cigar reserve, and we had it around about 25% sherry and the rest 75% American white oak. But then a lot of people got agitated as the years went by, and many people in America thought, "Wait a minute, do you mature your whiskey in tobacco leaves?" I said, no, we don't do anything like that. And there's a lot of anti-smoking. So we decided to change it and call it the Dalmore Grand Reserva, which didn't really mean anything. And every time I came back to America, people would say to me, "Richard, what about the cigar malt?" "Oh, but we've got the Grand Reserva." "Richard, don't give me that." I said, "But it's the same whiskey." No. So eventually we got together and said, we've got to really reproduce it. So on the 18th of March, 2011, in Las Vegas, I'll never forget it. This is now 70% Methuselah sherry, 20% American white oak, and 10% Cabernet Sauvignon from Shadow Haute Marbouzy. This is coming in at 44%. Why 44%? Because when you actually light that cigar, like Jeff's got just now, and I'm not going to smoke, but I love the cigars. I had one the other day. But in fact, when you start going through it, you take your time. The flavor will change, nice and spicy, rich, peppery, and everything else. Well, you need that extra weight. So when we pour this one out, this is a great, beautiful assemblage. But look out for the 70% Oloroso Cas, 20% American white oak, and 10% Cabernet Sauvignon. So with it being 44%, you need to hold this one. Please, guys, hold this one a bit longer. Remember, the middle of the tongue, hold it there, underneath the tongue, and back up there. The longer you keep the whiskey in your mouth, the more you'll extract the flavors. Same when you go for a great dinner or great lunch, you don't just swallow the food, you take your time. So let's have a big slanjiva, but really hold this one and you'll see the excellence of the whiskey. Slanjiva.
Slanjiva.
And let it go down. Rich, but because of the age, you really are going to start to see that licorice, but still got that beautiful chocolate orange. So no matter which cigar you take, if you take that wonderful, cigar that you're talking about there, the sun-grown, that will really make it very, very special. But you must take your time. When you're smoking a cigar, don't be in a hurry. When you're drinking the Dalmore, don't be in a hurry. The combination of everything. And if you want to accentuate it, get some beautiful coffee. Coffee, Nicaragua, Java, Rwanda coffee, 2 mouthfuls of that, keep it there, and then smoke the cigar. Really will enhance it. But it's something special. That this makes, I just want people quite often say to me, but I don't like cigars. Doesn't matter. If you don't like cigars, it doesn't make any difference. This assemblage is absolutely unique. And because of the Cabernet Sauvignon, really it gives it that softness, that cassis note towards the end. But 44% really gives it that extra energy on the palate.
Well, Richard, that's a beautiful combination. I just paired it with my Florida Sun-Grown. And I got to tell you, I love the fact that you guys pushed back on, I call them the pleasure police, that were saying, oh, you can't have word cigar on the bottle and all that. And I commend you for that, because I know that, in the UK, you've got...
Jeff, you're right. We got a bit of stick, why are you promoting it? I said, listen, cigars are something that needs to be given the time. And as you know, in Scotland, in England, and parts of America, you used to smoke in a hotel, restaurant, all stopped. Then he said smoking outside, not allowed. But now there are 1 or 2 places springing up that allow you to have that independence and just smoke in your own leisure. But
so that's a big deal, because a lot of companies would have just cowered and said, all right, we're going to stop. And thank you for pushing back, because I know that there's some of your fellow distilleries that did not, and I commend the ones that did. And Dalmore is one, and Balvenie is the other, that have been they're like, listen, we're not shying away. We know that you guys smoke cigars, love fine single malt whiskey, and we're not going to give in. The smoothie crowd is not buying $50,000 bottles of whiskey. So anyway.
Jeff, I'm going to ask you, how many cigars, are you a regular smoker? Is that a cigar every day for you?
I usually smoke 2 cigars to 3 cigars every day.
Every day. But do you find the best time is after dinner?
The best time for me is first one I light up in the day when I'm driving, and then one when I'm driving home. And those are my 2 best times. Let me tell you,
really,
traffic jams are no problem when you're smoking a nice cigar. Everybody else is all pissed off and all angry when they're driving in a jam. If the traffic light turns red on you, got to wait. No problem. I'll just puff on my cigar.
Yeah. When I was in Las Vegas, I always remember the guys were smoking cigars. When they went to tee up, they literally just took the cigar, and I always remember just took the cigar out of their mouth, and they would throw it on the grass. And then they would, whack the ball, then pick it up and go back to it, But it was just the way, okay, cigar on the grass, then we'll play the shot.
So Frankie, what'd you think about the cigar malt?
Well, Richard, we had Ricky Crawford on a Sticks and Sips earlier during the run, and we were mentioning cigar malt. So that's kind of the first time that I picked up a bottle and was able to have it, and it was quite phenomenal. I love the story behind it. I've got a lot of Las Vegas friends that were there when you launched Cigar Malt, and they were always, you've got to hear Richard's story about what drove him to create this blend, not only the first time, but to bring it back the second time.
Yeah. You're absolutely right, Frankie, because people say, well, what's the difference? Because originally it was around the 25%, but to go up to 70% was exceptionally expensive for us. But what we felt was it got this lovely marzipan, creamy, silky note from the Matusum sherry, and it was just softened up like a Merlot grape. But this was Cabernet, just to give us that lovely cassis edge. So it's a great combination, but it goes with most cigar styles. Okay, you get the hot peppery notes from the cigar, But once it beds down and you get that good draw, I'm a great guy. I love cigars, but what I can't stand is when I get a tight cigar. That's one of my pet hates. I like to have it nice and flowy, and that's how it should go with the Dalmore when you do that.
Oh, I love Richard's description of the plugged cigar.
Yeah.
So Jeff, would you recommend he goes all box press just to ensure that he doesn't get that?
That's interesting you bring that up. So listen, cigar malt is not, you're not going to find that everywhere. It's more of a little harder to find expression. So what we did today on coronacigar.com, we created because we knew Richard, thank you for doing this. We're doing a bottle of cigar malt with a box of Florida sun-grown FSG Toros. So you're going to get the box of cigars. You're going to get the bottle of Dalmore, and then Benjamin, which was so cool to do this. We have the Dalmore tasting glasses. Okay. Now this is what Richard was talking about. It has a little lid on it. So like when Richard does a tasting in the restaurants and in the lounges, they set them up with a lid so this way it keeps the aroma in it. So you'll get 2 of these tasting glasses that Richard, you're the only guy I've ever seen that has these Dalmore. So anyways, you'll get 2 of these special Dalmore tasting glasses, a box of FSGs, and a bottle of the cigar malt. And that's $250, and it's going to include shipping. So we'll have that on the website today, where you can go ahead and order it, and we'll start shipping them tomorrow. So that way we'll get a chance for people to share and take in this wonderful whiskey that I'm so happy that Richard and the folks at Dalmore are making.
Yeah, but could just say this is a great offer, great style. But what you've done, Jeff, more than anything, is you've said, here's a great cigar with a great whiskey. It needs the patience, but you need to share it with your friends. When they share it with their friends, and tell them, please tell them, take your time, hold it long in the mouth. If you see guys knocking it back, well, okay, not too often doing that, but it is about highly respecting the cigar and the whiskey. Take your time, but when you take your time, you'll enjoy it even more. That's why to get the right time when you do it.
Richard, if I may, this is one of the most important things that you've as I've followed you and watched your presentations over the years, time is the key essence which you've never moved off of, besides flicking the glass. But besides that, the concept of time is so important to you, and you are such an advocate for taking your time. And that's the one thing with cigars, is that you must take your time. They're not cigarettes. You must take your time to enjoy them. And I think that's the greatest thing. And I honor you for bringing that to the entire concept of enjoyment, in that we must take our time to fully enjoy the wonderful work that goes into producing a spirit, and the wonderful work that goes into producing a cigar, because it's driven by time. It's driven by people's energy and their efforts. And a master blender. We at Drew Estate have a master blender named Willie Herrera, who's much like you, who has to evaluate all the inputs that go into making a whiskey as we go into making a cigar. But time is the key. It always is, from beginning to end.
I mean, it's just so important, Frankie, more than anything. You've got the filler, the binder, and the wrapper. They all play a major part in that cigar. But, it is, I cannot stress that enough, from the very beginning, holding it long in the mouth. But it's the enjoyment you get if you really take your time with it and, go into it far and see the nuances I'm talking about. Then it becomes part of your life. And then hopefully one day you'll maybe come to Dalmore and see it for yourself. And then you've got it in your heart. I mean, I've been going to Dalmore, since I joined the company in 1970. I still love it. Even when I go down to Jura, I still love it. Even when I see one of my bottles on a shelf, I still love it. It's a passion that's endless.
So one of the great things about you traveling the world doing what you do, Richard, do you find the cigar culture, the guys that appreciate single malt Scotch and fine cigars, don't you find it's kind of the same no matter whether you're in Dubai or whether you're in Hong Kong or in London or in America? They're kind of the same type of guys. They're cut from the same cloth.
Yeah, they are. But what they want to do more than anything, one word, and it's enjoyment. You know, quite often, the saddest thing, if I can just tell you this, because you mentioned about the Far East and Dubai and what have you, you know, when I go there, they say to me, Richard, have a cigar. And I would say, yeah, but I'm not going to be able to enjoy it. Why not? Because you keep asking me questions and, you know, I put it down and I can't enjoy it. So I'm going to say, once the presentation's over, and that's the best time, can we go down, sit at a table, light up a cigar, and then just enjoy it and say, everything's behind us. We can now relax. You can ask a few questions, but not as many as the other guys. But really, that's when the enjoyment comes in. But we're all have the camaraderie. You know, all our whiskey distilleries come together at these whiskey festivals, and people say, you're not talking to that guy from William Grant, are you? You're not talking to that guy, Johnny Walker. Yeah, because we're all in that same scenario. We are representing the Scotch whiskey industry, and that's what it's about.
So, guys, I want to take this one step further, too, to show you how cool Dalmore is when it comes to cigars. So, Benjamin was wonderful about getting this for us. I want you guys to see this. This is the Dalmore humidor. This is one of a kind, man. This thing's amazing. So, it's got the Dalmore on there. So, if you want to have your Dalmore humidor with your beautiful cigars and have it with a bottle of cigar malt, we're going to take one customer that's purchased any of these cigar malts or any of the Dalmore packages, and we're going to raffle this thing off. So somebody's going to win this humidor, and I'm jealous because you know what? I would love to have this in my office, but I told Benjamin we would make sure that it goes to a customer, and we're going to be picking this out next week. So I just say, you know, it's one of those things. It's like, put your money where your mouth is. These guys did. Look, beautiful Dalmore humidor.
Jeff, am I excluded from that? Because I was promised that I would be in the running if I made a purchase.
I think you're out of luck, buddy. We're going to make sure your name is not drawn. If you're out.
This is impossible.
Frankie, we'll take care of you. Don't worry.
That's what I like to hear. That's what I like to hear. But that is a beautiful, beautiful humidor. To get your FSGs in and to get all your Drew Estate sticks in and get all the cigars that you enjoy, because I really do think it's a matter of enjoyment. People ask, like, what's the best whiskey? And it truly is what you enjoy the most.
Yeah.
And you always enjoy the most what you know the most about. So with that, Richard, I want to say thank you for schooling me on the 12 and the cigar malt, because taking a sip with you, even though we're very separated, we need to look at the silver lining and just take a sip with you and with Jeff together, separated by many, many miles. But we are here together at this time, and with you, Ben. So to Slancheva. So I say to you.
Slancheva. You know, I actually wanted to, I came on real quickly just to kind of point something out. You know, when Tommy, who works with Jeff, came up to me and said, hey, do you think we can get Richard Patterson to do an interview? And I said, with Tommy, I don't know. He's like, no, with Jeff. I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. And the reason why I thought it was a perfect combination is because both Richard and Jeff, even though they're as modest as they are about the crafts that they go into, I mean, list off, Richard, we'll start with you first. Richard, how many brands do you work with besides the Dalmore?
How many, sorry?
How many brands do you work with White and Makai besides the
Yeah, quite a number. I mean, there's a huge amount of numbers, but you know, I have to be honest and say, yeah, we've got a lot of single malts, we've got a lot of blended whiskeys. Yes, okay. Obviously, Dalmore is the one that I represent the most, but the dedication, passion, commitment I have for Dalmore is the same for all my whiskeys. But you know, you have to give them love. You know, and when I look back in my life and say, well, you know, 54 years, you know, whiskeys are my family. White Makai's been my family, but these whiskeys are my children, and I've watched them grow. You know, Dalmore has just rocketed, you know, in success, but it's been a long journey. But we need people like Jeff and Frankie and yourself, you know, and the people in America to try and understand them and, you know, try and be encouraged to drink them moderately, sensibly, but sharing it. That's what it's all about.
Well, one of the things that I find really fascinating is Richard, you don't only just work on the White Makai brands, you also do a lot of volunteering. You do a lot of judging, you do a lot of guest speaking, you do a lot of traveling around the world. And Jeff, equally, from what I know about you as well, you're not just an entrepreneur that owns a cigar lounge. You're a farmer. You're also an advocate for all things cigars around the United States. You do a lot, not just the little bit that we're talking about today. And I always find it really, really fascinating that you guys have done such a great job of what you do for the things that we're talking about today. But the fact that it's only a small portion of the passion that you put into the business, I find absolutely remarkable. So I'm just glad to be on this with both of you guys. So I appreciate both your times.
Well, what you must do in our industry, it's very important. The industry gives you a lot, but you must try and put it back, because we're touching on the people's lives that are like, you know, Jeff, Frankie there, that have to work with the customers, is trying to tell them a little bit more about the product so they can appreciate it. Because, you know, like these whiskeys, they've taken years. And when I see this stag, I remember the label. Somebody will remember the label. When it first started, it was just a small stag. And then this bottle came on. That took years to nurture and to get the packaging correct. Same with working with Baccarat, trying to really make sure that that was the perfect bottle. But the packaging and the presentation is absolutely critical, but we must get the product right. That's sacrosanct. Get the product right on all fronts.
Well, thank you, Benjamin, for pointing that out. I got to tell you one thing about advocacy real quick, because our industry is always under attack. And I'm sure that the spirits are as well. Man, listen, when the tax man comes, he's looking for alcohol and tobacco. That's the easiest guys to hit. And I've always said, if you're not advocating for yourself, no one's going to do it. And if you're not at the table when these guys are trying to dice up these tax plans or regulations, whatever, if you're not at the table, you're going to be on the menu. And for too many years, we were on the menu. So we keep having to fight it. And I tell you, Richard, whenever I go to Scotland, that's always something that, or anywhere in the UK, it's always it encourages me of why we got to watch out for this stuff. Because I saw how badly, they treated cigars in the UK and a lot of other countries where, the boxes and the bands they want to get rid of. In Canada, they've already done it. Australia, they've already done it. And, if you let them run loose here, they'll do the same thing. So unfortunately, we have to spend a lot of time and effort doing that. But listen, this is a passion thing, just like you, Richard. It's passion. Yeah. We love what we do, and it keeps us going every day.
Well, that's what it's about.
So, Richard, if I may, as you're taking your sip and you're getting it around and enjoying it, you say 54 years in the whiskey business, and this is a very tough question, and I don't expect you to give me a full and complete answer, but please give me the best answer you can. After 54 years in the whiskey business, what are your biggest takeaways from that experience?
There are many. There are a lot of great products that have given me wonderful memories. I suppose the Delmore 62-year-old and 64 years old, when I've seen, nurturing that spirit and putting it into, the wood and getting it ready for, being launched, that is very critical, because when you get to whiskeys that are 50, 60, or 62, or 64, this is a bit like your grandmother, your grandfather. You don't push these guys around. You respect them and you give them as much love and passion as you possibly can, but they need to be looked after. So when we nurture these products, particularly the 62, that was one of our biggest launches, only 12 bottles. That was something very successful, because I had Dave Broom with me, actually came to the distillery, and it was like opening a pork pie. You don't know how much meat is it the right way. And I didn't know if the influence of the sherry, but when we tasted it, we hit the jackpot. And that's what I was really looking for. So that's given me many memories. Shackleton whiskey under the ice for 106 years, 103 years, should I say, replicating that. Great, the Constellation Collection and the Patterson Collection, 12 bottles, you know, just short of 1.3 million for these kind of legends. So there are many, but I have to say there are many, but there are still many more to come, because I'm always looking for perfection. We always talk about the masterpiece in the making of Dalmore. Well, we're always looking for new expressions. We've got many different sherry expressions coming out, and these are ones to look at. But we come back to the same word you talked about early, Frankie, and that's getting the right time and to make sure that we only release it when it has hit the absolute perfection that we're seeking.
That is,
Frankie,
yeah, I'm sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
can you imagine making 12 boxes of cigars that were going to sell for 1.2 million, and then, you know, how nervous you got to be that, you know, that these the guys that spend the money on this are going to enjoy it, and that they all smoke perfect, and these things are, you know, everything that they're built up to be. That's got to be some a little nerve-wracking.
You know, Jeff, a lot of people say to me, hey, Richard, you know, you talk about £1 million for a bottle. Do you think it's worth it? And I would say, is it worth it? It's priceless. Because when you open that bottle with the people that you love, you know, having a special occasion, whether it's your wife or what have you, a celebration, and we're now going to have a Dalmore with our coffee, what are we going to do? We're going to toast each other. And I said, but wait a minute, hold on. How are we going to do it? You don't knock it back and you tell them to top of the tongue, underneath the tongue, back in the middle. You switch the lights off. And I said, what's going on here? He said, we're going to give you some chocolate afterwards. So when you put it in your mouth, hold it there, let it go down, give us a bit of chocolate, then the cigars. People would say, I'll never forget that day. And that's what it's about.
Wow. So that was 1.2 million pounds, not dollars. So we're talking about $2 million.
Yeah, well, you know, but I have to say, it's very difficult because the prices have gone up so high. That's why you've got to look around wherever you go. There'll be bargains out there, but there are also some very high prices as well. You know that as well as I do for some of the cigars, some of these, you know, matured vintage cigars. Some of them are really excellent.
All right, Frankie. So I'll put that on my Christmas list. I want that collection that Richard's talking about, and I'll buy you the plane ticket to go pick it up. Go to London, and
all right,
and,
let's
we'll
do
take
this. Just are we gonna flip it to the Chinese? No, Jeff. Yes.
We'll do that in 3-4 years.
Listen. You know, listening to Richard, you know, speak so eloquently about like these beautiful brands and you know, and being such a big part of the involvement with creating a product that takes so much time to come to fruition. And Jeff, you know what that's about, because, you know, as a farmer, you know what it takes from the point that that seed went into the ground till it's a cigar that you can put in a wrapper. It's a long time. In one case, it may be 20 years. In one case, it may be 3 years. But in either case, it is a labor of love. But within that, for both of you, there's the people. There's the people that are involved in achieving that end. And Richard, you know, in your lifetime of whiskey, I mean, what would you say with not only the different people you've met, but the people that actually produce a product? What's your takeaway from them?
My you know, when we're talking about making, you know, say a bottle of Delmore, I have to strongly emphasize this is everybody's baby. From the people at the distillery, the stillman, getting the barley in, making sure everything's working, and then getting the men. You know, we have a plant called Dalmore Distillery, but it's 3 miles from there. We've got Gordon. We have a great team of people who actually have to, you know, make sure they get the samples for me. They then put the, you know, the assemblage together. But I have to tell them, now listen, guys, the sherry casks are arriving on Monday. They've come in from Spain. You pour out the sherry, you get rid of the sherry out of the cask, but you guys must fill that immediately. Don't hang around. They said, but, you know, Richard, we've got other orders. No, you've got to fill that, because I want that cask, when it's damp, with the sherry and the porcelain wood, to be filled immediately, and we leave it for 2 to 3 years. Then I go up 2 years later, 3 years later, and I sample it with the guys, and then I show them, look, guys, look what's happened since I last saw it. Look how it's changed. Look how it's being developed. And then, of course, we put it down to Grangemouth, where we bottle it. Great amount of girls in the bottling hall, putting the labels together. So important. The packaging has to be right. And then putting out, exporting, documentation, customs and excise. So I can tell you, I'm just one small part, but it's all about teamwork together. But you know, the best thing is when we then phone them up and say, hey guys, guess what happened? White Makai, Dalmore, just been voted, you know, whiskey producer of the year. And we've been rewarded for it. But it's a team effort at the end of the day. So it's very important. The last thing I'm going to say to you is, people say to me, do you not get fed up traveling, Richard? You're in America 1 minute, then you're in the Far East. The biggest thrill I get is when I share my whiskeys with people. They put it in their mouth, hold it, and let it go down. And their body language, their eyes, the way they look, tells me they've enjoyed the whiskey. And that's the biggest thrill that I get, to see the enjoyment of people drinking our whiskey. Same with Jeff, the enjoyment they get smoking the cigars.
Amen. When a customer is smoking a great cigar and a great whiskey, you can just tell it's their, man.
Yeah.
They love it. So yep. And so you're
know
happy
what I mean?
to do it. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now, Jeff, you have one of the most, I want to say, complete collections of just about everything, because I do believe I count you as a collector, you know, and you share that collection with your customers at your spot. You know, you do have one of the widest varieties of whiskey, and it's always a great thing to go visit you. Along that way, along that journey, Jeff, what is it that really drives you to acquire all these whiskeys, all these things? What is it that you want your customers to experience?
That's a great question. And I can sum it up in something that's pretty interesting, is that we have, you know, besides really old Dalmores, we've got really old whiskeys from other distilleries. And I remember, because we got like the Macallan 52, the 55, the 60. We sold a 72 recently. But what's interesting, when you get up into these really expensive bottles, some of these things are $30,000, $60,000, $90,000 a bottle. And believe it or not, we'll sell those by the dram. And Richard, you'll get a kick out of this. Every year in Orlando, there was a duty-free show. And you'll get guys in that are in this industry, and they'll be, we had some folks over from Russia, all right? And they bought a dram of each. And the reason they bought a dram of each, because they can sell that stuff, but not everybody can buy a bottle, right? But to be able to buy a dram and share it with somebody, because even if it is $3,000 a glass, which is a lot of money, that's still a lot less than $90,000. And so I like the fact that when folks can actually, they're like, man, I can't believe you got that open, and I'm so glad you do. And that's on the high range. There's other stuff that are, you know, that's $300 a glass or whatever, but 300 to 3,000 is your really rare whiskeys. But it's nice when people say, hey man, we're glad that you have those by the dram, because most of the times you can't find it that way. It's usually sold as a full bottle, and very few people get to taste it. So I think that was one of the coolest parts about it. And fortunately, or I should say unfortunately, fortunately, when we buy the whiskey, they tend to go up. So when we sell them by the dram, it's a lot cheaper too than what it actually sometimes costs by the ounce if you were to buy that bottle as a replacement. So that has happened to us over the years. And I think that's probably the best thing, the happiness that people have. And they generally, when they do that, a lot of times it's for celebration too. The same way you're going to celebrate with a fine cigar, a fine whiskey. So if you just got done having let's say you just got done winning the Super Bowl, or you just got done, having something special, sold your company, or you guys just made a hell of a deal, or you want to show some love to somebody that might have, helped something, whatever that great achievement is, it's always in celebration. And so it's hard to describe. It's a happy moment, and you like seeing those happy moments.
That's fantastic, Jeff. And I know that your consumers are always very happy to be at your spot, enjoying something that elevates them. And speaking of elevation, Richard, is there going to be something new for the Dalmore that we can expect in the near future?
Yeah, of course. Make no mistake, we've got to be thinking 5-10 years ahead. So there are many different expressions that we've got in the back burner that we are working on at the present moment, and will be released, fairly shortly. We cannot be complacent. We've got to be innovative. We've got to have a side of our business that using casks that nobody else has, but we've got to deliver that high-end quality luxury feel to it that has ticked all the boxes. And that's why, it's not experimenting. We've got to keep looking all the time to try and find. That's what I said, the masterpiece in the making. We're still doing that literally all the time. But rest assured, there's going to be some big babies coming in to the United States very shortly.
Well, I'm super excited about that. And we do have a question by Andrew R. And it's basically very simple, is what could you expect at a distillery tour at the Dalmore?
Well, first of all, you'll always get a warm welcome. We've got a great distillery tour going, but unfortunately, the present moment, because of the lockdown, things are not happening at the present moment at the distillery. But when they arrive, obviously, you'll be taken to every part of the distillation process, with the mash tun, the actual pot still showing you the shape of the stills. But more importantly, you'll be then taken to the warehouse, and you won't just walk in. The doors will be opened. You'll walk in, and then you'll smell all the different warehouses, damp, cool, or what have you. And then you'll be given a dram of the different styles, and you'll be shown our sherry butts, our port pipes, our barriques of Cabernet Sauvignon, etc. But you'll also be shown where the location of the distillery is, and all these facets that make the Dalmore what it is, very unique, very, very special. So it's going to be an experience more than anything, but you'll leave that distillery with that heartwarming fellowship of really what whiskey's about.
So Richard, what do you got to do to be able to drive that cool Dalmore truck when you go? Do you have to take that for a test drive?
Yeah, you got to be really careful, because that's an old truck, That's going back many years, but it goes to a lot of shows. The guy that renovated, he spent a fortune on it, renovating it. This is the old truck that used to take the cask from one part of the warehouse to the other to bring the assemblage of the cask so they could be examined and then blended together. So it's a very special truck, but thankfully it was restored, and a lot of loving and care and attention's gone into it.
So one other thing, if somebody were to take the trip, make that journey, I call it a journey, and there's people that come from all over the world to make this journey. It's incredible. There's a castle somewhere across the street
Castle Loud. That is the ancestral home of the Mackenzie clan. We call it the chieftain, or the Caberfay as he's known. He's the chieftain of the clan Mackenzie. That's his own castle. And he you mentioned the Mackenzie, the Castle Loud, the Cromarty. When we produced these bottles, we made an assessment and said, listen, we'll give you a donation towards the upkeep of that castle. And that's what we did. So the Caberfay owes us a wee bit, because any castle in Scotland costs you a fortune to renovate, to make sure it's safe the whole year round. But it is something special, and it is unique if you get a chance to see it. But visit any castle in Scotland. Your first one you'll see is Stirling Castle, Edinburgh Castle, built in granite rock, volcanic granite and all this. It is foothold where if you took these castles, then you would take Scotland. It said if you take Stirling Castle, then you take Scotland. Same with Edinburgh.
Well, I don't think I've got any more questions other than, you know, having read Goodness Knows and being almost about 3/4 of the way through, so don't give away the ending. So I'm gonna advise everyone, if you really want an in-depth and a beautiful story about whiskey, Goodness Knows is a phenomenal title to help you understand. And there's so many great books by so many great authors, you know, that are describing whiskey, the whiskey process. I admire, Richard, your incredible way of remembering dates, because I can't remember when I was born, much less when King Henry VIII took the throne. So, but I love your story of how we get to whiskey. And at some point, guys, look up Richard on YouTube, because he's going to, there's some great presentations where you run through the entirety of the history of how we actually get there from the monks, from the distillation, from the church. And I love that story. So I want to personally thank you for that, because that is always an amazing tale of how we get to whiskey. My good friend Robin Robinson, who wrote the whiskey course, likes to say, listen, you can talk about all the history you want. Whiskey's born from the tax man. And Jeff, you'll appreciate that, because it's a beautiful story to talk about how we get to whiskey. And as we get to wrapping this up, Richard, you know, time is the greatest thing that you make us remember. What would you say is the second most important thing we should remember as we're enjoying whiskeys and cigars?
Yeah, time, but enjoying with friends, sharing. That is what it's about. If you can share that love and that passion with a great cigar and a great whiskey, that's what it's all about. And you know, during this pandemic, it's about friendship that's going to keep us all together, but looking after each other. Don't be selfish. There are people out there that are having a hard times, and make sure, you know, they are being looked after. Even the old people. A lot of people are being neglected just now. So even young and old, try and take care of each other. And if we do that, we'll get through it.
Amen.
I love that. You know, there was there was a group of bartenders I had on very recently, and they said, you know, when we're talking about what's a concept behind a perfect pairing, and one of them said time and place. And that was so beautiful, because if we can share the time and the places with our friends and our family and our loved ones, then that's a great way to enjoy both.
Absolutely.
Two beautiful items. So, Sancheva.
So please, all the people in America that are watching in, you make sure you take care, look after each other, but stay safe, but stay well more than anything.
Sancheva.
Sancheva. Jeff, I'm going to leave you with the last words, man, because, you know, you're a man of few words, but with very many of them.
Well, thank you. And I just want to thank Frankie, you guys, for putting us on, the team at Drew Estate. Richard, thanks for taking the time. I know it's late there. And I always love to have you sharing your knowledge with folks. You know, you're one of a kind, and you've done so much to educate people and to bring the single malt lifestyle to folks around the world. And Benjamin, I appreciate you setting this up and coming through with these great glasses in the humidor, and so that we can share this these special packages with the customers, because I had to fight for years to get one of these glasses myself. Every time you do a tasting, people are like, how do you get those glasses? So thank you so much. And I appreciate everybody's effort at the whole crew at Drew Estate, doing all the technical stuff behind it. And we look forward to folks seeing this over and over and over and learning more and more about Dalmore, the cigar life, FSG Cigars, Drew Estate, the whole package.
Cheers.
Slanjava.
Thank you, Frankie. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Richard. Especially Richard staying up a little bit late tonight. You know, this is
No
this is
problem.
for you, so appreciate it. Looking forward for all this to being over and having you back in Florida and having a dram. So Slanjava.
I definitely look forward to that. Thank you so much, Richard. Thank you, Ben, for putting it together. Thank you, Jeff. It's an honor to be part of this and bringing this out to everybody. And you know, we'll be rebroadcasting the earlier part of the interview about 7 o'clock. So we'll get some more people jumping in and watching. So Richard, thank you from the bottom of my heart on behalf of Drew Estate.
Lovely to see you, but guys, stay safe, stay well.